I opened my late wife's jewelry box. Empty. Her sapphire necklace, her golden earrings, the emerald ring we promised to our granddaughter, all gone. My son stood in the doorway, chewing on an apple like nothing mattered. You relax, Dad, like you probably misplaced them. Old men forget things. The bite of the apple echoed through the room like a slap. He smirked. Or maybe you should face it, you're not fit to keep track of anything anymore. My chest clenched. Forgot? Misplaced? Those jewels were her soul, her memory, her legacy, and in that instant I knew. He hadn't just lied to me. He had robbed his own mother's grave, and laughed in my face while doing it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening from in the comments. It helps us share more stories like this. The kettle whistled in the corner of the kitchen, shrill and impatient. I rose slowly, my knees cracking, and switched it off. Steam fogged my glasses. I set out one mug, not two. Still, after all these years, I sometimes reached for the second cup before remembering. Her cup was there on the shelf, the porcelain one with a tiny crack near the handle. She had insisted on keeping it. It's still good, Victor. Don't throw it away. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. I heard the pipes rattle as if the building itself coughed. Through the thin walls, I caught the neighbor's TV again. Some morning news anchors laughing too cheerfully. I sliced bread for toast. The knife scraped across the wooden board. The smell of rye filled the kitchen. For a moment it was almost comforting, until I remembered how she used to butter the slices for me, always spreading too much and then laughing when it dripped. The window was cracked open, letting in the cold air of early morning. Outside, the elevator doors clanged. Someone's child was crying in the stairwell. Life moved on. I sat down, the chair legs squeaking on the linoleum, and poured tea. The mug warmed my hands, but the apartment still felt colder than ever. By mid-morning, I shuffled to the balcony. The city looked the same, the gray blocks, the laundry hanging from windows, the stray dog nosing around the dumpster. Downstairs, old Mrs. Ivanova was arguing with the janitor about trash collection again. Her voice carried up, shrill and stubborn. I leaned on the railing. This was my world now, quiet, ordinary, filled with the small noises of survival. Behind me, my son's door slammed. He walked past, phone in hand, not even glancing my way. I heard him mutter into the receiver, "Yeah, I'll get the cash, relax." Then the front door banged shut. I stayed on the balcony, my tea cooling, heart heavier than the mug in my hand. In the afternoon, I went to the store. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, buzzing like tired bees. I picked up potatoes, onions, a loaf of bread. At the checkout, I fumbled for my wallet, my fingers stiff, slow. "Do you need help, sir?" the cashier asked politely, but her glance flickered toward the line behind me. I could feel the man waiting sigh loudly. My son appeared suddenly, grabbing a pack of cigarettes. "Come on, Dad," he muttered, impatient. He tapped his card on the machine and paid for both our things. The cashier smiled at him, not me. And my son smirked as he handed me the bag. "I see, you'd be lost without me." The words stung, but I kept quiet, carrying the bag in both hands, shoulders hunched. That evening, I sat again at the kitchen table. The refrigerator hummed. The light bulb flickered once, then steadied. I placed the bag on the counter, unpacked slowly, deliberately. I found myself opening the drawer where her jewelry box had always been. Even empty, it seemed to radiate her presence. I closed it quickly, heart pounding. I sat in the living room that night, the lamp throwing a weak yellow light over the photo albums stacked on the shelf. I pulled one down, dust rising in the air like tiny ghosts. The first picture that fell out was of our wedding. She wore the sapphire necklace, shining brighter than any jewel in the room. I remembered how my hands shook as I fastened it on her neck that morning. "Too expensive," I told her then. She laughed, pressing my hand. "It's not money, Victor. It's us. It's our promise." I swallowed hard. Her voice echoed in my head as if she were still in the room. Another memory. Our daughter's 6th birthday. The emerald ring had glimmered on my wife's finger as she helped slice the cake. Our son, only 10 then, stood on a chair, insisting on giving a toast with a plastic cup of juice. He had once been proud of that ring, saying it looked like a superhero stone, and now he treated it like pawnshop scrap. I closed the album and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The plaster had a crack shaped almost like a branch. I used to joke about fixing it, but she would say, "Leave it. It looks like a tree reaching up." Now it looked more like a fracture running straight through my home. Later, I found myself at her wardrobe. The scent of her perfume still lingered faintly in the fabric, though the bottle had been empty for years. Scarves folded neatly, a dress she wore to our granddaughter's recital, a pair of shoes too worn to keep but impossible to throw away. I touched the fabric, remembering her laugh when the granddaughter tried on those shoes, clomping around the living room like a clown. The necklace had hung loose around the child's neck, almost comically oversized. One day this will be yours, my wife told her, eyes shining. One day, but that day was supposed to be years from now, not stolen in a single act of betrayal. I sat down on her armchair, the one by the window, worn smooth at the edges. How many nights had she curled there with a book? The cushions sagged, empty, but I could almost feel the warmth still pressed into the fabric. I held the emerald ring I had managed to recover, turning it in the dim light. It caught the glow of the lamp, green fire dancing in the stone, and I promised her, though she could no longer hear me, I will protect what's left of you, even from him. The first signs came quietly, small things, easy to dismiss if I wanted to. One evening he came home late. His jacket smelled of cigarettes, though he never smoked. When I asked, he snapped, Why do you always question me? You think I'm still a kid? Another night I caught him rummaging near the wardrobe where her jewelry box was kept. He slammed the drawer shut the moment I stepped in. Looking for something? I asked. He gave me a cold smile. Just making sure you're not hiding money around here. We both know you can't manage it well. The words stung. Manage? I'd worked 30 years at the depot, paid for this apartment, raised him, and he dared call me incapable? Once, over dinner, he tapped his spoon against the bowl and muttered, You know, Dad, people our age shouldn't cling to material things. Life is short. You could sell Mom's jewelry and actually live a little. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. Those pieces weren't material. They were her. I shook my head. They're not for sale. He rolled his eyes, pushing his chair back. Then don't complain when things get harder. At the pharmacy, while I paid for my blood pressure pills, he sighed loudly behind me. Dad, you're slow. Everyone's waiting. Maybe next time just give me the money and I'll handle it. The cashier gave me an awkward look. I felt my ears burn, and then the whisper started. Mrs. Ivanova from downstairs stopped me by the elevator. Victor, dear, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I saw your boy near the pawn shop yesterday. He looked upset. Everything all right? My throat went dry. I forced a laugh. He probably just passed by, but her eyes lingered on me with pity. At night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling crack, the one shaped like a tree branch, and wondered if it was splitting wider. Each word, each glance from him was another fracture in this house. Something was coming, and I couldn't shake the dread that it would break more than plaster. The cracks widened. Every day brought a new sting, a fresh humiliation. One evening, I was watching the news in the living room. The anchor's voice droned about rising prices. My son barged in, remote in hand. Turn that off. You don't pay the bills here, I do. He switched the channel to sports. I sat frozen, the sound of my wife's old favorite program cut off mid-sentence. You don't pay the bills here. But the utility receipts still had my name on them. At dinner, he poured himself vodka and raised the glass. To moving forward, he declared. I raised my own glass of water. To your mother, I said softly. He slammed his glass down so hard it rattled the plates. She's gone, Dad. Stop dragging her ghost into every meal. His words hit me harder than the glass. The next morning, I went down to take out the trash. Mrs. Ivanova caught me near the bins. She lowered her voice, almost whispering. Victor, I shouldn't say this, but I saw your son near the pawn shop again, with a bag. I pray I'm wrong. Her words clung to me like the smell of the garbage bags. I walked back upstairs heavier than when I came down. A week later, my daughter visited. She brought cake for me, and my granddaughter ran straight to the drawer, as always. Grandpa, show me the shiny things, she giggled. I froze. The jewelry box was lighter than it should have been. I covered it quickly, but my daughter's eyes narrowed. Dad, did you misplace something? Her tone wasn't cruel, but the seed of doubt was there. And I knew who had planted it. Another night, I caught him on the balcony with his phone. Through the glass, I heard his voice, low but urgent. I told you, I'll get the money. Stop calling. I'll sell more if I have to. My heart dropped. Sell more. He turned, saw me staring. He smiled on too quickly. Just a friend. Don't worry about it, old man. But the words were already burning holes in me. Then came the cruelest moment. We were at the store picking out groceries. I reached for a carton of milk. He laughed, loud so others heard. Don't bother, Dad. You'll forget it in the fridge and it'll sour, just like everything else you touch. People in line chuckled. I stood there with the carton in my hand, humiliated, my ears burning red. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the apartment felt louder. The tick of the clock, the drip from the bathroom tap, his footsteps pacing in his room. I lay staring at the ceiling crack, wider now, splitting the plaster like a wound. And I thought, maybe it isn't the house breaking apart. Maybe it's us. It wasn't only him. The world around me began whispering, pointing, judging. In the elevator, I met Mr. Petrov from the 5th floor. He eyed me kindly, then chuckled. Victor, I saw your boy down by the pawn shop again. Must be selling old junk, eh? At least he's helping you out. You're lucky. Lucky. I forced a smile, my throat tight. Lucky was not the word. At the pharmacy, the young clerk handed me my pills with a sympathetic smile. Your son was here yesterday, paid for something big. He's a good man, taking care of you. I nodded, unable to speak. Good man, if only she knew what he had truly taken. Even the neighbors' kids added to it. I passed them in the stairwell, laughing, kicking a ball. One boy said to another, "That's the old man whose son is always hustling for money. My dad says he'll sell everything in that apartment soon." They ran off, not knowing their words cut deeper than knives. At church one Sunday, Father Andre patted my shoulder after service. "Victor, your son spoke with me. He said he's worried about you, about your memory. He asked me to pray for your clarity of mind." My chest tightened. So that was his game, planting doubt everywhere. Not just stealing jewels, stealing my reputation too. By the time I returned home, even the walls seemed to whisper. The neighbors' TVs, the children playing outside, the hum of the pipes. Everything carried the echo of one truth. My son was preparing the world to believe him, not me. The jewelry box was heavier in my hands than I remembered. I lifted the lid, expecting to see the glimmer of green and blue. But the velvet lining lay bare, empty, like an open grave. I froze. The air in the room thinned. I pawed through the box, lifting the tray, checking underneath, even shaking it, as if the jewels might rattle out from some hidden corner. Nothing. My chest pounded. I searched the wardrobe, the drawers, even my old coat pockets, hands trembling. Still nothing. The floor creaked behind me. I turned. My son leaned on the doorframe, chewing an apple, his smirk as sharp as the crunch echoing in the silence. "They're gone," I whispered, my throat dry. "Your mother's jewels, they're gone." He took another bite, slow, deliberate. "Maybe you misplaced them." "I don't misplace things like that." My voice cracked. "They were here last week. You saw them." He shrugged, leaning against the frame. "Old men forget. It happens. Maybe you should start writing things down." The casual cruelty in his voice struck harder than a slap. I stumbled toward him, the empty box in my hand. "Don't play with me. Where are they?" He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "Careful, Dad. You sound paranoid. Maybe the neighbors are right. You're slipping." The words hit me like a blade. Paranoid, slipping. He was already poisoning the world against me. "Your mother's memory was in that box," I shouted, shoving it toward his chest. "Her love, her story, your daughter's inheritance, and you dare call it nothing?" He tossed the apple core into the trash with a flick of his wrist. "They're just stones. You can't live in the past forever." "Not stones," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. "They're her." He rolled his eyes. "She's gone, Dad. Wake up." For a moment, the room spun. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the sound of a distant TV through the walls, everything blurred into a dull roar. Then the rage surged up, sharp and choking. "You stole from your own mother," I said, voice shaking. From your family, from your daughter's future." He didn't move, didn't deny, just stood there with arms crossed, a faint smile on his lips, as if daring me to prove it. The next morning, I couldn't sit still. The empty jewelry box lay on the table like a corpse. I stared at it until the ticking clock drove me mad. I put on my coat and left. The first pawn shop smelled of dust and stale cigarettes. Behind the glass sat dull gold chains, scratched watches, cheap rings. The clerk, a bald man with yellowed fingers, glanced at the photo I shoved across the counter. "You seen these? An emerald ring, sapphire necklace?" He squinted, then shook his head. Not here, try somewhere else. My throat tightened. I folded the photo back into my wallet and stepped out into the cold air. The second pawn shop was darker, lit by a single buzzing lamp. A man with a lazy eye peered at me. When I asked, he barked a laugh. Old man, you think I remember every rock that comes through here? Unless you want to buy, don't waste my time. He waved me away like a beggar. I left, my heart sinking, anger simmering just beneath my ribs. By the time I reached the third shop, my legs ached. This one was newer, cleaner, glass polished until it gleamed. The woman behind the counter smiled politely. Yes, sir, how can I help you? I pulled the photo from my wallet again, my hands trembling. Please, these pieces, have you seen them? She frowned, then turned to a ledger. Her finger traced the entries. Finally, she looked up. Actually, yes, an emerald ring came in 2 days ago, and a necklace, sapphire, beautiful pieces. My knees nearly gave out. Do you remember who brought them? She hesitated, then said, a young man, about 30, dark hair, rust-colored jacket. Rust-colored jacket. The same one my son wore almost every day. Can I see them? My voice cracked. She disappeared into the back and returned with a tray. There they were. Her ring, her necklace. I knew them instantly. The tiny scratch on the clasp, the way the emerald caught the light. My throat burned. For a moment I couldn't breathe. How much? I whispered. The price stung, but I paid. I clutched the bag in my hands like treasure, the receipt folded tight in my pocket like a weapon. That evening I waited at the kitchen table. The jewels lay before me, shining under the flickering bulb. Beside them, the pawnshop receipt. When he came in, dropping his keys carelessly on the counter, I called out, sit down. He frowned but obeyed. I slid the items across the table. The ring, the necklace, the receipt. His face drained of color. For the first time in weeks, he didn't smirk. Where did you get these? He whispered. I bought them back, I said, my voice shaking with fury. From the pawn shop, where you sold them. His hands twitched on the table. I had debts. I didn't know what else to do. The confession was like a knife. I slammed my fist on the table, making the jewels rattle. You stole from your mother, from your daughter's future. You lied to my face, made the world think I was crazy. Tears welled in his eyes, but I didn't care. I had the proof now, and there would be no forgiveness. He sat there at the kitchen table, his hands twitching on the wood. For the first time, he didn't have that smirk. His eyes darted between the ring, the necklace, and the pawnshop receipt. I had no choice, he whispered. Debts. People were pressing me. You don't understand. I don't understand. I slammed my fist again, the lamp above us rattling. I worked 30 years on the railways, broke my back so you could study, eat, live without worry, and you, my own blood, steal from your mother's grave? His voice rose suddenly, sharp and panicked. Would you rather they break my legs? Would you rather they come here and hurt us both? The words hit me like cold water. For a second I saw fear, not arrogance, but then he leaned back, jaw tightening. You should have helped me when I asked. I begged you to sell those jewels weeks ago, but you care more about dead stones than your living son. I stared at him, heart pounding. Living son. The phrase twisted in my chest, as if he believed his life was worth the betrayal of his mother's memory. You begged me? My voice was low, trembling. You manipulated me. You mocked me in front of neighbors, made them think I was losing my mind. You set me up to look like a fool so you could rob me blind. He slammed his palm on the table. Because you never trusted me. You think I'm weak. You always compared me to her, your perfect daughter, the golden child. And me, nothing but a disappointment. The air in the kitchen was suffocating. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried. But all I could hear was the crack in his voice when he said disappointment. For a flicker of a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the boy who once made me a Father's Day card out of cardboard and crayons. And now that boy was gone. He pushed the chair back, breathing hard. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoyed selling her jewelry? His eyes shone with something between rage and shame. I hated it, but I hated feeling powerless even more. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the table. You had a choice, always, and you chose betrayal. He stood up, knocking his chair to the floor. You'll regret this, he spat. You think you can humiliate me, but you'll see what happens when I'm pushed too far. The words froze my blood. Not remorse, not apology. A threat. I sat alone at the table after he stormed out, the door slamming so hard the walls shook. The jewels lay before me, but they felt heavier than ever. I had them back, yes, but I had lost something far greater. My son. And maybe my family. The days after the confrontation blurred together. I moved through the apartment like a shadow. The kettle whistled too loud. The clock ticked too slow. Even the floor creaked as if mocking me. At the store I stood too long at the bread shelf, staring. A woman behind me muttered, "He's blocking the way." Another whispered, "That's the one whose son says he forgets things." I gripped the cart until my hands shook. But I said nothing. Back at home, the silence pressed in. I sat at the kitchen table, the empty jewelry box in front of me. I touched its velvet lining bare cold. He passed by, phone in hand, didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just slammed the front door on his way out. The echo rang through the apartment like a verdict. One evening, the phone rang. My daughter, "Dad, I don't want to upset you," she said carefully, "but my brother told me you accused him of stealing. He said you've been confused lately, misplacing things." I closed my eyes, my throat burned. "I am not confused," I whispered. "I found them in a pawn shop. I bought them back." Silence. Then her sigh. "Maybe you misunderstood, Dad. Stress does strange things." Her doubt hurt worse than his betrayal. Even she was beginning to believe his lies. That night I walked out onto the balcony. The city stretched below, grey, indifferent. The stray dog rummaged in the dumpster again, same as always. I gripped the railing, my knuckles white. The wind was sharp, cutting through my thin sweater. For a terrible moment I wondered if it would be easier to just let go. But then I saw her photo on the shelf through the window. Her eyes, her smile. I stepped back inside, trembling. The neighbors started avoiding me. In the elevator, they spoke in half sentences, cutting off when I entered. One muttered, not quietly enough, "Why, poor man, he'll be in a home soon." I wanted to shout. To tell them it wasn't me losing my mind, it was him losing his soul. But the words stuck in my throat. That night, lying in bed, the ceiling crack loomed above me. It no longer looked like a tree. It looked like a wound splitting open wider and wider. And I thought, maybe I am losing it. Maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's what everyone will believe. The days turned into weeks. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, every sound louder than it should be. The scrape of a chair, the drip of the bathroom tap, the hum of the refrigerator at night. It all pressed on me until I wanted to scream. I sat at the kitchen table one afternoon, a cup of tea cooling in my hands. Across the table, her chair sat empty. I reached out without thinking, my fingers brushing the worn fabric on the armrest. It was still warm in my memory, though she'd been gone for months. I closed my eyes and suddenly I was back at her funeral. The day was gray, the sky heavy with clouds. People stood in black coats, murmuring prayers. I stood by the coffin, barely able to breathe, gripping my daughter's hand. And my son, he stood apart, scrolling on his phone. When I asked him to help lower the flowers, he muttered, "Yet what's the point? She doesn't see them." Even then, I should have known. Even then, his heart was somewhere else. I opened my eyes and the kitchen swam back into focus. The tea had gone cold. I pushed the cup away, my stomach twisting. At night, I walked the empty hallway, switching the light on and off, on and off. The switch clicked too loud in the silence. I stopped in front of the mirror. The man staring back at me was someone I barely recognized. Hollow eyes, wrinkles deep as canyons. A face worn down by grief and betrayal. I touched the glass, but the reflection didn't comfort me. "Who are you?" I whispered. The mirror gave no answer. The neighbor's whispers grew sharper. One evening, as I waited for the elevator, I overheard two women from the fourth floor. "His son says he accuses everyone of stealing. Poor man, losing his mind. All tragic. Maybe they should put him somewhere safe." They fell silent when they saw me, offering polite smiles. But I saw pity in their eyes, not respect. Pity. I rode the elevator alone, my chest hollow, the buzzing light above flickering as if mocking me. My daughter visited once more. She brought cake for her little girl, but her smile was forced. "Dad," she said gently, "maybe you should see a doctor, just in case." Her eyes flicked toward the jewelry box. Empty, of course. He had seen to that. I wanted to scream, to shake her and say, "Don't you see? He's the thief, not me." But the words died on my lips when my granddaughter climbed onto my knee, asking softly, "Grandpa, where are the shiny things?" I hugged her tight, hiding my tears in her hair. What could I say? That her father had stolen them? That the treasure meant for her was pawned away like junk? Numbera in. I swallowed the truth and let the silence choke me. That night was the worst. I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling crack again. It stretched wider now, jagged like a scar. I thought of the balcony, the railing, the wind cutting sharp, the way it might feel to just step forward and end the ache. I stood there in the dark, the city lights flickering below. The dumpster, the stray dog, the endless gray blocks, all of it meaningless. I gripped the railing until my hands ached, and then my eyes fell on the photo of her again, glowing faintly from the shelf inside. Her smile, her eyes, the promise we made, take care of them, Victor. No matter what happens, protect our family. I staggered back inside, collapsed onto the couch, and wept until my chest hurt. For the first time, I admitted the truth to myself. I had lost him. My son was gone. What stood in his place was a stranger, a thief, a liar, and yet the world believed him more than me. The morning after the worst night, I woke up with the taste of metal in my mouth. The kind you get when you've cried too long and slept too little. The apartment felt smaller, the air heavier. The ceiling crack looked like a road now, a thin path cutting across old paint. I made tea, the kettle shrieked. I turned it off and forgot to pour. Then I laughed, a dry, ugly sound. If he wanted me to doubt myself, I wouldn't give him that gift. I laid everything out on the table like a mechanic preparing to fix an engine. The empty jewelry box. The emerald ring I'd bought back. The pawnshop receipt. A ballpoint pen. A school notebook my granddaughter had left behind. Pink cover, stickers peeling. On the first page I wrote in block letters, "This is what happened." I listed dates, times, names, what the clerk looked like. That rust-colored jacket. I drew a line under it and wrote, "What I will do." The refrigerator hummed, the building pipes groaned, someone's radio bled through the wall, slow, old love songs. I felt her hand on my shoulder, the way she used to do when I started to spiral. "Breathe, Victor, then act." I breathed. Then I acted, small, stubborn actions that didn't look like much but felt like a spine growing back. I opened the wardrobe and pulled down the dusty folder with our papers, the one she guarded like a dragon. Birth certificates, old utility bills, our marriage license with a coffee stain. At the very back, folded into a brittle envelope, I found them. Appraisal slips from years ago when we insured her jewelry before the surgery. Serial numbers. Stone weights. Descriptions written in the precise, bored handwriting of an appraiser who never imagined his words might one day save a family. My hands stopped shaking. I slid the appraisals into a new clear sleeve and labeled it with a piece of tape. Evidence. From the hallway came the squeal of the elevator and the clack of neighbor shoes. The world moved. So would I. I made a second list, people who had seen, heard, smelled the truth around us without knowing it. Mrs. Ivanova saw him near the pawn shop. The pharmacy clerk heard him pay for something big. Father Andrei heard his talk about my confusion. My daughter, hesitant, but she would listen if I placed the truth in her hands, not my voice. The front door clicked. He walked in, phone against his ear, voice low and tense. I said, "I'll fix it, don't call me here." He froze when he saw the table, the ring, the receipt, my notebook open like a declaration. What's this?" He tried a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Order," I said. The word surprised me with how steady it sounded. He stepped closer. "You think writing in a notebook will change anything?" "No," I said. I think it will remind me of everything you want me to forget." He smirked. You're making a fuss over stones." I tapped the appraisal sleeve. Like, these stones have names, weights, serials. They have numbers the law understands. His face flickered. Only a second, but I saw it. A flinch. A crack in his confidence. "Relax, Dad," he said, backing away to the hallway. "You're not calling the police over family matters." I didn't answer. I wrote instead, my pen scratching loud in the quiet. "He is afraid of paper, not of me. Use paper." He left, door slamming. A bowl rattled in the cabinet and settled. I stood there with the stupid pink notebook and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Weight shifting. Not victory. Not yet, but the floor under me stopped tilting. I put on my coat and went downstairs. On the landing, I ran into Mrs. Ivanova, wrestling a bag of potatoes as if it were a drunk relative. Victor, you look different, she said, squinting. Yes, straighter. Help you with that? I asked. You? With those sticks you call arms? She smiled despite herself and handed me the bag. You heard, huh? Your boy. Well, tongues wag. I told them to shut up. Tongues don't know truth. I shifted the bag to my hip. Do you remember what time you saw him near the pawn shop? Her eyebrows climbed. What am I, a camera? She snorted, then softened. Evening, after 7, he had that ugly rust jacket, looked at the ground like it owed him money. I nodded and, without hiding it, wrote the details down in the notebook. She watched my pen. Good, she said. Paper doesn't forget like people. She tapped her temple. Sometimes heads are thieves too. Back upstairs I made a sandwich, rye bread, too much butter, the way she would have. I ate standing at the counter, looking at the ceiling crack. It didn't look like a wound anymore. It looked like a map, a route from one side of the room to the other, from helpless to prepared. I took the ring from the table and slipped it into the tiniest inner pocket of my coat. Not because I didn't trust the apartment, because I needed to feel it against my chest when I walked. On TV, a daytime show chattered about scams against the elderly. A woman with bright lipstick said, "If someone makes you doubt what you know, that's control." I laughed softly. "Thank you, stranger," I told the screen and clicked it off. I dialed my daughter. She answered on the third ring, cautious. "Dad?" "Don't speak," I said gently. "Just listen." I read to her like a witness reading a statement. The dates, the pawn shop, the clerk's description, the appraisals, the receipt number, no trembling, no begging, just facts stacked like bricks. Silence stretched, then her voice small. "Dad, I didn't know." He said. "I know what he said," I replied. "Now you know what happened." She inhaled, shaky. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to meet me tomorrow morning," I said. "At the notary near the post office, 9 sharp, bring your ID, bring a clear head." "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." I hung up and wrote the appointment in the notebook in big letters, underlined twice. Evening slid in, blue and cold. I turned on the kitchen light. It flickered once, then steadied, as if deciding to stand its ground. He didn't come home for dinner. I didn't wait. I washed the plate, dried it, put it away. I laid my documents in a neat stack inside a folder. Appraisals, receipt, the pawn shop's business card, a photocopy of my passport, my marriage certificate with the coffee stain. At the very front, in the pink notebook, I tucked a photo of my granddaughter wearing the oversized necklace and grinning. If I faltered, I would look at her face and remember why. I set an alarm for 7 a.m., then another for 7:05. Old men forget things, apparently. I decided to be an old man who forgot nothing. Before bed, I stood by her armchair and placed my hand on the worn fabric. "I'm moving, Anna," I said into the quiet, "not away from them, toward what's ours." The apartment didn't answer, but the air felt lighter, as if some window I couldn't see had cracked open. I turned off the lamp. The dark looked less like a hole and more like a curtain. Behind it, morning waited, and with it, paper, stamps, signatures. I slept. For the first time in weeks, I slept. Morning came with the hiss of the radiator and the rattle of pipes. I shaved carefully, dragging the dull razor across skin that hadn't felt sharp edges in weeks. I put on my best jacket, dark, patched at the elbow, but it still carried the smell of her lavender soap. She had always insisted on washing it by hand. I tucked the folder under my arm. Documents, evidence. My shield and sword. The notary's office sat above the post office, a narrow stairwell smelling of old paint and dust. I climbed slowly, gripping the railing, polished smooth by decades of tired hands. Inside, the waiting room hummed with whispers and coughs. A row of plastic chairs sagged under pensioners holding folders like lifelines. One woman muttered about her grandson selling her TV. Another clutched her bag, eyes darting. The air smelled of paper, ink, and despair. I took a number and sat. The slip read 47. The screen blinked 38. 10 souls before me. 10 stories of loss, betrayal, bureaucracy. The man beside me leaned over. "You here for inheritance?" he whispered, as if it were contraband. "Yes." He shook his head. "Vultures circle faster than we bury." He tapped his folder. "I'm cutting my son out, drank away my pension twice. Enough." He spat into a tissue, folded it carefully. Paper is stronger than blood these days. I nodded. Paper stronger than blood? When my number flashed, I entered the office. A young clerk, her hair in a tight bun, motioned me to sit. What can I do for you today, sir? I laid the folder on the desk, opened it with deliberate care. Receipts, appraisals, photocopies. The pink notebook on top. I want to secure my property, I said. I want to ensure it passes directly to my daughter. My son... I paused. He forfeited his right. She raised an eyebrow. Forfeited? I slid the pawnshop receipt toward her. Then the appraisal slips. Her eyes scanned them. I see, theft. Yes, family theft. She clicked her pen. In that case, you can formalize a will excluding him. Or, if you wish, draft a deed of gift now in your daughter's name. That way it's immediate. No waiting for courts. Immediately. The word struck like a match. And him, I asked. Wait, what if he contests? She adjusted her glasses. If you can secure his signature on a refusal of inheritance, witnessed, it closes the door permanently. Her calm tone, the smell of ink and carbon paper, the scratch of her pen, these were my allies now. As I left, my daughter waited in the corridor, shifting from foot to foot. She looked younger than usual, her coat buttoned wrong, eyes red as if she hadn't slept. Dad, she whispered, I'm sorry, I should have believed you sooner. I placed the folder in her hands. Don't be sorry, be ready. Tomorrow we do this properly, with witnesses, with his name on paper. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. Yes. We walked home in silence. The city around us was the same. Cars honking, the smell of diesel and fried bread from the kiosk. But inside me something shifted. For weeks I had been drowning. Now, with every step, I felt the ground beneath my feet again. He wanted me weak. He wanted me doubting. Instead, I would be the man with papers, stamps, signatures. And when the moment came, the same hands that once rocked him in a cradle would place his name on a refusal. Forever. I spent the next morning at the kitchen table again. The folder lay open, papers sorted into neat piles. I had never been a man for order, but now every receipt, every photocopy, every note in the pink notebook mattered more than bread on the table. First, I called the pawnshop. The same clerk answered, her voice brisk but polite. This is Victor Ivanovich, I said. You sold me back an emerald ring and sapphire necklace last week. Do you keep a copy of the seller's ID? Yes, of course, standard procedure, but those records are confidential. I understand, I cut in steady. I'm not asking for details. I just need you to confirm. Did the name on the ID match mine? A pause. Then careful words. No, sir, it did not. That was enough. I wrote it down in the notebook. Not Victor. Next, I visited the pharmacy. The young clerk who had once praised my son for paying big stood behind the counter, arranging cough drops. Miss, I said softly, now do you remember a man, about 30, dark hair, rust jacket, buying medicine recently? She nodded. Yes, he bought antibiotics, paid cash, big bills. Surprised me. Would you be willing to write that down? She hesitated, glanced at the security camera above, then she scribbled on a receipt pad. Customer, male, approximately 30, rust jacket, cash, large purchase. She signed her name at the bottom, cheeks flushed. I folded the slip carefully, slid it into the evidence sleeve. At church on Sunday, Father Andre welcomed me with his usual kind eyes. But when I asked him gently about the conversation with my son, his comments about my confusion, the priest frowned. Yes, he admitted. He told me you had been forgetting things. He asked me to pray for you. I didn't think much of it. Would you be willing to tell the truth if asked? I pressed. The priest looked pained, but he nodded. Of course, lies have no place in God's house. I wrote his name in the notebook, underlined it twice. Back home, I spread everything out on the table. Pawnshop receipt, appraisals, pharmacy slip. Witness names? The folder bulged. It looked like nothing special, just paper. But paper could topple walls. That evening, he came home earlier than usual. He tossed his keys on the counter, eyes sharp, scanning the table. Still busy with your little detective game? He sneered. I closed the folder calmly. Just keeping my mind sharp. He stepped closer, his voice low. You think you're clever, old man? Running around with scraps of paper that won't save you? I met his gaze steady. You're right. Paper won't save me. It will bury you. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Fear or rage, I couldn't tell. He laughed too loud and stormed off to his room, slamming the door. The plates in the cabinet rattled, but my hands did not. That night, I played the fool. I hummed as I washed dishes, left the TV on too loud, shuffled around like the forgetful old man he wanted me to be. Better to let him think I was harmless. Better to let him sleep easy. Meanwhile, in my jacket pocket, the folder waited. Heavy as stone, sharp as a knife. Morning came grey and wet. The kind of morning when the city looked like it had been rinsed and left to dry crooked. I dressed carefully, not my patched jacket, but the suit I'd worn at her funeral. The tie was crooked, the shoes scuffed, but it was still armor. The folder lay in my hands like a newborn. I had checked it twice the night before, 3 times again in the morning. Receipts, appraisals, witness slips, notebook, passport copy. Everything ready. At 9 sharp, my daughter stood outside the notary's office, clutching her purse with both hands. Her eyes darted like a cornered bird. "Dad," she whispered, what if he finds out?" "Then he'll find out too late," I said. My voice was calmer than my chest felt. Inside, the clerk with the tight bun recognized me. She gestured us into a smaller room this time. The air smelled of ink and coffee gone cold. 2 other witnesses sat waiting, neighbors I had asked quietly the day before. Mrs. Ivanova with her potato bag hands, and Father Andrei, looking stern in his plain black coat. My son's shadow wasn't here, not yet. The clerk shuffled papers, then looked at me. "Are you ready to proceed, sir?" "Yes," I said. The deed was simple on paper, monstrous in weight. All property, all valuables, all rights, directly to my daughter. Excluding him. Final, irrevocable. But the clerk had been right. There was one last chain to break, his claim to inheritance. For that I needed his name, his hand, his signature. That evening I staged it. Dinner ready, 2 plates set. I even opened a bottle of cheap wine, though I hadn't touched alcohol in months. He came in late, muttering into his phone, eyes red. He stopped when he saw the table. "What's this? Celebration?" "Peace," I said softly. "Sit, eat." He eyed me suspiciously, but hunger won. He shoveled food like a man starved, washing it down with the wine. Halfway through, I slid a sheet of paper across the table. "I want us to stop fighting," I said. "This is nothing big, just a note to keep the lawyers off our backs, a formality." He frowned, fork clattering. "What's this?" "An agreement," I said, my voice steady, almost bored. "That you won't contest what's already hers. You said yourself, stones mean nothing. So let's make it official, then nobody doubts either of us." He stared at the page. His name typed neatly at the bottom, a space waiting for his signature. For a moment I thought he would tear it up, but he leaned back, smirking again. "Oh, you really think paper scares me? Fine. I'll sign your stupid paper. Then maybe you'll finally shut up about it." He scrawled his name, sloppy, arrogant. The pen tore the page a little. He shoved it back at me. "There, happy now?" Happy wasn't the word. Relieved, armed, like a soldier who finally found his weapon. That night, when he stumbled to bed, I stood in the kitchen with the paper in my hands. His name, his signature, witnesses already lined up, waiting to confirm. I slid it into the folder on top of everything else. Then I closed it gently, like closing a coffin lid. The next morning I returned to the notary with my daughter. We handed over the signed refusal. The clerk looked it over, stamped it, slid it into the file. The sound of that stamp echoed like a hammer striking steel. "It is done," she said simply. I looked at my daughter. She looked at me. For the first time in weeks, her eyes carried no doubt. Outside, the city noise was the same. Buses wheezing, vendors shouting, pigeons scattering. But in my chest, a new silence spread. Not the heavy silence of despair, the clean silence of certainty. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. But in the quiet office above the post office, with paper and ink, I had already taken back what was ours. And he didn't even know it yet. The first signs came quiet. A phone buzzing in his room late at night. Raised voices through the thin walls. Words like payment, deadline, penalty. I listened, lying still in bed. The ceiling crack above me, no longer a wound, but a reminder. Time was running out, only not for me. One evening, as I stirred soup at the stove, he stormed into the kitchen, slamming his phone on the counter. "You cut me off, didn't you?" he hissed. Don't play dumb. I know you're doing something. Money doesn't just disappear. I ladled soup into my bowl, steam curling up, the smell of dill and potatoes filling the air. I'm eating dinner, I said simply. He grabbed the spoon from my hand, soup spilling onto the table. Don't play games with me? I looked at the spill, at the oily circles spreading across the wood. Then I stood calmly, wiped it with a rag, and sat again. Eat if you're hungry. His nostrils flared. He wanted me to shout, to tremble, to give myself away, but I only chewed my bread slowly, each bite deliberate. Finally, he shoved the chair back so hard it screeched. Aye, fine, keep your little secrets, but don't think I won't find out. He stormed off, door slamming, the building shaking. I finished my soup in peace. The next day, the calls began. At first, he barked my name from the hallway. Then, when I didn't respond, he called my phone. Dad, his voice low, urgent. I need to know, did you move something? Did you talk to anyone? Just the pharmacist, I said, truth disguised as nothing. Blood pressure pills. He cursed and hung up. Later, another call. You're hiding things. I can feel it. If you screw me over, you'll regret it. I set the phone down on the table, let his voice spill into the room, tinny and hollow. When he stopped, I picked it up and pressed end. That night, I played my part. I turned on the TV too loud, let the same news cycle repeat. I asked him absent questions. What day is it? Friday already? He sneered, satisfied. Good, let him think I was fading. But under my pillow, the folder lay safe. Stamped, sealed, final. It happened on a Saturday. The market was crowded, the smell of fried dough and fish heavy in the air. I walked slowly, basket in hand, picking out apples one by one, checking for bruises just like she used to. Then I heard him, his voice sharp, cutting through the hum of the crowd. There he is, he called. My son. He pushed through the people, phone pressed to his ear, waving with his free hand like a showman. See what I deal with? He said loudly to whoever was on the line. Old man wandering around, wasting time, can't even remember what day it is. Heads turned, eyes landed on me, some curious, some pitying, some laughing. I kept my gaze on the apples, green, red, bruised, smooth. All the same, all different. He stepped closer, plucked one from my basket, held it up. Look at this, he buys the worst ones, always, then complains when money runs out. A vendor chuckled nervously. Someone whispered, poor guy. My face burned, but I forced my hands to stay steady. I placed the apple back, turned to pay. He leaned in close enough that his breath touched my ear. Play dumb all you want, he whispered. I know you're hiding something, and when I find it, you'll wish you'd never crossed me. I straightened slowly, meeting his eyes. Calm, empty, the way a lake looks before a storm breaks. Then I turned and walked away. Basket heavy, spine heavier. Behind me, his laughter rang out, brittle and too loud. Back at the building, I entered the elevator just as two neighbors stepped out. They smiled politely, but I caught their whispers as the doors closed. His son says he's slipping. Did you see him at the market? Poor man. The elevator hummed, carrying me up like a coffin being lowered. But inside I felt the opposite of death. I felt the slow, steady thrum of patience. Let him humiliate me. Let the world laugh. The quieter I was now, the louder the silence would be when the truth landed. The first knock came late at night, heavy, impatient. I froze in the hallway. Through the peephole, two men stood, leather jackets, restless eyes, not neighbors. One of them lit a cigarette, exhaled smoke into the stairwell. Then they left, footsteps echoing down the stairs. A minute later, his door opened. I heard his hissed whisper, I told you not to come here. A pause. Next week, I'll get it, I swear. The door slammed. The next morning, he stormed into the kitchen, face pale, hair wild. He yanked open drawers, scattering spoons, forks, receipts. Where are they? He shouted. Where are the papers? I know you've got something. I sipped my tea slowly, steam fogging my glasses. Papers? I asked, calm. For the bills? In the cabinet, where they've always been? He cursed, slammed the drawer shut. Don't play innocent with me. You think I don't know? You think I don't see you sneaking around with that stupid folder? He lunged toward the bedroom. I rose, blocking the doorway with nothing but my frame. For a second, we stood inches apart. His breath came fast, his eyes bloodshot. Move, he growled. No, I said quietly. The word hung in the air like smoke. Just one syllable, but it carried years of weight. He shoved past me anyway, tore through the blankets, the closet, the shelves, but he found nothing, because the folder wasn't there. It was with my daughter, tucked safely in her wardrobe under lock and key. That evening he sat at the table, head in his hands. I need money, Dad, he said suddenly, voice raw. If you don't help me, they'll. He stopped, biting his lip. I looked at him, at the boy I once carried on my shoulders, now crumbling under debts and lies. You should have thought of that before you pawned your mother's ring. His head snapped up, rage flaring. You think you're better than me? You think you're some saint? Without me, you'll die alone? I stood, carried my empty plate to the sink, washed it slowly. The sound of water filled the silence between us. When I turned back, he was glaring, fists clenched, shaking with fury. But I only dried the plate, set it back on the shelf. Maybe, I said softly, but I won't die a thief. That night, the calls kept coming. His phone buzzed on the table. Unknown numbers, sharp voices leaking through the speaker. Deadline, last chance, don't test us. He cursed through the phone across the room, glass cracking. And I sat in my chair, hands folded, watching. Every curse, every broken word, every tremor in his voice told me the same thing. The walls were closing in, not on me, on him. The storm broke on a Tuesday. I was in the living room, adjusting the radio. Static, fragments of a folk song static again. The air smelled of dust and old fabric. Then the door slammed open. He staggered in, face white, eyes wild. Sweat glued his shirt to his back. Dad, he gasped, you have to help me, please. They're serious this time. They said they'll break my legs. He dropped to his knees on the carpet, clutching my hand. I felt his fingers tremble, hot and desperate. Just sell something, anything. The house, the furniture, her old things, please. I looked down at him, the boy I had once taught to walk, now crawling before me like a stranger. An hour later, rage replaced begging. He stormed through the apartment, kicking chairs, punching the wall hard enough to leave a dent. You think you've won? You think your stupid papers mean anything? He screamed. You'll regret this, old man. I swear I'll make you pay. His voice cracked. He slid down the wall, panting, tears mixing with sweat. For the first time, I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing. The silence of a man who has already buried what cannot be saved. That night he tried again, softer. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, eyes red, voice small. Dad, he whispered, yet I'm your son. Blood. Doesn't that mean anything? Don't throw me away like trash, please, please. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. I stirred my tea, sugar swirling like tiny storms, and said nothing. By the end of the week, he was a shadow in his own home. He avoided my eyes, spoke in half sentences to voices on the phone, slammed doors, then begged again within the same hour. I carried on as if nothing had changed. I bought bread. I watered the plants. I read the newspaper, underlining words with a pencil like she once did. But inside me the stillness was absolute. The folder was sealed. The signatures stamped. The witnesses waiting. All that remained was the stage. The moment. The curtain to rise on his undoing. I set the table as if nothing was wrong. 2 plates, 2 forks, bread in the middle. The old clock on the wall ticked loud, every second like a hammer. I simmered soup, the smell of dill filling the kitchen. The same way she used to cook when she wanted us to sit down and talk. But tonight wasn't about peace. Tonight was about ending it. At 7 sharp, the door opened. He stepped in, shoulders tense, phone glued to his ear. I told you, I'll fix it. Don't call me again. He shoved the phone into his pocket, saw the table, raised an eyebrow. What's this? Another of your little performances? Sit, I said simply. He smirked, but dropped into the chair, tapping his fingers impatiently. A knock came at the door. He frowned. Expecting someone? Yes, I answered. I opened the door to my daughter. She stepped in, eyes wary but firm. Behind her came Mrs. Ivanova, potato bag hands folded primly, and last Father Andrei, cross gleaming faintly in the hallway light. My son's face twisted. What the hell is this, a jury? No, I said calmly, setting bowls on the table. Just witnesses. The room grew heavy, soup steaming, bread untouched, the tick of the clock marking each breath. He leaned back in his chair, laughter sharp and brittle. You're losing it, old man, dragging in neighbors, priests, your precious daughter. For what? To watch you babble? I placed the folder on the table, thick, worn at the edges. It landed with a dull thud that silenced even his laughter. Not to babble, I said. To remember. He drummed his fingers on the table, faster and faster, like a cheap drummer at a wedding. Go on, Dad, show them your fairy tales. I'm curious what you cooked up this time. I opened the folder. The paper smelled faintly of dust and ink, that dry, almost metallic scent you get in archives. I slid the first sheet across the table. A pawnshop receipt, dated, stamped. The ink already fading, but the numbers sharp as nails. He barely glanced at it. Your receipt? Big deal, could be anyone's. The clerk's business card fluttered onto the table after it. I didn't speak. I only tapped the date with my finger, slow, deliberate. Mrs. Ivanova leaned forward, squinting. That was the evening I saw you, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the heavy air. Rust jacket, head down, near that pawn shop by the bus stop. I remember because you didn't greet me. You always greeted me before. The room tilted. His smirk cracked. Old woman's memory, he snapped. Worthless. But his hand twitched on the table. Next, I unfolded a slip of paper torn from a pharmacy pad. The young clerk's scrawl, male, approximately 30, rust jacket, cash, antibiotics. I pushed it across. He snatched it up, read it, then barked out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. So what? I bought pills? You want applause for stalking my pharmacy trips? Not pills, I said. My voice stayed soft, but the silence around it made it ring louder. Cash, big bills, where from? His jaw worked. His tongue darted to the corner of his mouth, the way it used to when he was a boy caught stealing sugar cubes. Then Father Andre spoke, his tone low but heavy. You told me your father was losing his mind, that he forgot things, that he needed prayers for clarity. The priest's eyes locked on him. And yet here he sits, remembering more clearly than either of us. The words hit like stones dropped into a well, deep, echoing. My son shifted, shoulders tight, face reddening. I leaned forward, resting my palms flat on the table. The lies are unraveling, I said. One by one, they lead to the same place. He shot up from his chair so fast it skidded, nearly toppled. You think this circus proves anything? Paper and gossip, that's all you've got. He jabbed a finger at me, eyes wild. You're pathetic, dragging everyone here to make me look bad. You won't succeed, you hear me? But his voice cracked on the last word. Everyone heard it. And I hadn't even played my final card yet. The room had gone still. Even the soup on the table cooled, skin forming on top. Only the clock ticked, loud and steady, like a drum roll. I reached into the folder again. This time not slowly, not ceremoniously, Alcan, but with a snap, like drawing a blade. One sheet, plain typed. At the bottom, his own messy scrawl of a signature. I laid it flat in the middle of the table. His eyes dropped to it, and in that moment I saw the shift. The swagger drained, the smirk froze. His pupils flicked back and forth, reading the words, and his lips moved silently. Refusal of inheritance. Irrevocable. Witnessed. No, he whispered. Then louder. Oh no, this is a trick. He snatched the paper, shaking it, crumpling the corner. You forced me. You lied to me. I didn't know what I was signing. Read it again, I said softly. You signed freely. You laughed when you did it. Mrs. Ivanova nodded slowly. I heard the laughter through my wall that night. The priest crossed himself. And God witnessed too. He slammed his fists onto the table so hard the bowls rattled, soup splashing over the rim. You set me up. You and your scheming daughter, snakes, both of you. He lunged across the table, grabbing at the paper. I caught it first, folding it calmly, sliding it back into the folder before his fingers reached. You can tear the copy, I said, eyes locked on his. But the original is stamped, filed, sealed. The color drained from his face. His body seemed to shrink, deflate. For the first time in his life, he looked small to me. He staggered back, knocking over the chair. No, you can't do this. It's my right. I'm your son. I stood, the folder in my hands, like a verdict. You were my son, I said. Until the day you pawned your mother's memory for cash. The words struck harder than any fist. He clutched at his hair, pulling, shouting wordless sounds, half rage, half despair. And around us, silence closed in, heavy, absolute. Witnesses watching, faces stern, the walls of his world collapsing. He stood trembling, eyes wild, chest heaving like he'd run a mile. Take it back, he barked. Undo it, I'm blood, I'm your son. I didn't sit, didn't blink. I let the silence stretch until even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Finally I spoke. You signed away more than the house, more than the jewels. He froze. What do you mean? You signed away my trust, and that never comes back. He staggered, gripping the edge of the table, knuckles white. No, no, you can't. Please. But I turned to the witnesses. To you this is finished? The priest nodded solemnly. Mrs. Ivanova folded her hands, lips pressed tight. My daughter's eyes burned, but she said nothing. I closed the folder with a quiet snap. That sound was louder than his begging. He sank to his knees, clutching his head, muttering curses, pleas, broken fragments. I walked past him to the door. Opened it wide. I leave, I said. Tonight you walk out of this house, and you never walk back in. He left that night. Didn't take much, just a duffel bag and his broken phone. The door slammed once, then silence filled the apartment like a long exhale. For days after, I still caught myself listening for his footsteps, the scrape of his key in the lock. But nothing came. Only the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the rustle of newspapers in the morning. My daughter moved back in for a while. Her laughter filled the rooms again, lighter than I remembered. She brought my granddaughter on weekends, little shoes clattering across the tiles, her voice high and bright. Grandpa, show me the treasure box, she'd say, and I would lift the lid one by one, showing her the jewels. Her eyes wide, her fingers careful, not greedy, not like his. Word spread in the building. Some neighbors looked at me with pity, others with respect, but I didn't care. The papers were stamped. The house, the jewels, the memories, safe. As for him, I heard rumors. Debts chasing him, jobs lost, doors closed. Some said he was seen at the station, begging for another chance. But he never came back here, and if he ever does, the door will not open. One evening I sat by the window, the sunset cutting the room in two. I thought of her, my wife, my anchor. I imagined her smile, proud, sad, maybe both. I whispered into the empty room. They'll never touch you again. I made sure of it. Then I closed the window, and with it the past.